welcome to this seminar. This is the second time that the group of finance and probability, the groups of finance and probability meet for talks, and this is a very nice case. We have the pleasure this time to have Jean Jacot here for a talk. Professor Jacot is one of the most famous probabilists in the world, I really say. For instance, the book which Shiryayev is very famous, and of course many contributions, and recently, since some years, the activity in finance, which is of course very important. And the title of your talk is Asset Prices from Small Scales to Large Scales. Is it correct?
Yeah, something like
nice.
That, yes.
So, please.
Thank you very much. So it's very nice to be here. And so I will talk about finance, sort of finance. It will be more mathematical or methodological, in fact, than finance, than real. It's not empirical at all. And it's a joint work with Yassine Ait Salia, who is at Princeton. And, well, it's kind of part of a project, not so much of him, but rather of me, to understand what we call the noise in the financial data. So I will speak a bit about noise, but this is not the main object of the talk. So the problem is the following. You have, in finance, the traditional setting of finance is, we will consider a very simple situation where there is a single asset. I'm not looking at multivariate things, so there is a single asset and the price will be called ST. Okay? Typically you will say that ST, for no arbitrage reasons, it should be a semi-martingale. But apart from that, any semi-martingale would be a licit model, right? Nevertheless, in practice, people use what? Well, they use the Black-Scholes case model, of course, which is, I will come back to that, but very simple, or more complicated continuous Markov models, or models with stochastic volatility, like the Heston model or other model, or general model with stochastic volatility, or they use models with jumps, with finitely many jumps or infinitely many jumps, depending on the case. Okay, so this is supposed to represent the price according to time. Now, so that's one thing. But the other viewpoint is more and more common nowadays. People are trying to find, to introduce reasonable models for what they call tick-by-tick data. So they want to model the transaction times and, not so much, but that would be a corollary, and the transaction prices, or the returns between two successive transactions, right? And this is very, very frequent. So you have several transactions every second, or sometimes up to 100 or something for very liquid stocks, or even more than that with the automatic trading nowadays, right? So people are trying to model these micro, micro models to try to find this. And the question is, what is the relationship between the two kind of model? So at a micro level, you have, so of course you start with an initial price. Okay, so at time 0 it's S0, and I suppose that S0 is known and not random. So of course you start with the same price. And then you have transactions occurring at time Ti. So T0 is 0, say, And then you have the first transaction time t1, t2, and so on. And I will always call this is the time between two successive transactions. And then you have the price, where what you have, the price, if you look at the micro model, the price really doesn't exist between transactions. There is nothing. Okay, only the transaction price makes sense. So you have the price at the time, well, say pi, which is the price at the transaction time ti, and in between it just doesn't exist. So what are the connections between the two things? You would like, of course, that S is equal to pi. Okay. Now, how can we reconcile the two things? So there are two different ways. One is the converse of the other in some sense. You can start from the model, the macro model at a large scale, S, and try to find the micro model. Or conversely, you can start with the tick-by-tick model, the second part. Well, there is no model so far, but I will give some model for these things later on, and recover S, right? So if you go from 1 to 2, well, okay, with many. So what would you do? Well, the first natural thing is to say, well, I have those times, ti, and pi is simply S at time ti. That seems the natural thing to do. Okay. Now, the problem is that let's have a look at the structure of the data when you look at tick-by-tick data. Well, they have a very special structure. Well, first of all, they are always multiple, they are on a grid. They are always multiple of a basic unit, typically a cent. Okay? So for this talk, the unit of price will be 1 cent. So that means the prices pi are necessarily in the integers, well, or even in the positive integers, so in n. Okay, so that's one thing. Secondly, what do? Well, so they live on a grid. So you start here, for instance. The next price is like this. The next price is like this. Then you jump. Next price. Okay, so this would be a typical thing. Well, okay, so a typical thing you see. So you have typically 0 returns quite often, okay? And you have returns of 1, or plus or minus 1, of course, okay? And extremely rarely returns bigger than 2, bigger or equal to 2. And you also have the following situation, okay? Well, you have this type of structure, and then you have a kind of ladder. So this occurs, well, these times are not regularly spaced. Well, there is no reason. Actually, they are not. And then you have a kind of ladder very fast, so you go up this way. Okay, and then the ladder stops. So you have in a very short, well, I didn't put a right picture. It should be like this. Okay, it's a very steep. So the time here is not really more than the time between two other transactions, typical other transactions, but it goes up, or it may go down, of course, the same picture, one by one, again. And of course, this is due to the mechanism of order books, because you have to go along the, well, you have a big order to fill in, you have to go along the order book. So you had orders at this level, and then at this level, and this level, and you fill them, well, one after the other by construction itself. So if you really want to, well, of course, if you have a big ladder like this and otherwise something very flat, you would say model this independently of that and that. Okay, that would seem reasonable. But you have a mixture of the two very often. So here you will have a downward ladder, and then an upward, and then it will stay more or less constant. So how to model that is very, well, not that simple, right? So, of course, coming back to this, so those are some kind of stylized features that you always find. If those people are interested, I have at the end of the paper a few pictures showing real data. Well, this is Yassine's work more than mine, but real data showing this kind of behavior. Okay? Now, if you start with S and try to go to the micro level, if you take this, well, there is almost no chance that it will work, because S is, of course, S could be a semi-martingale which takes only integer values. Okay. This kind of semi-martingale, it's very simple, but it's in fact, it's a discrete type of model in some sense, and nobody used that. Okay? So if you go back to the typical model people use, say, for instance, a continuous model, then S is continuous. This has almost no chance of being an integer, except if the TIs are hitting times or some hitting times of the integers. If, in addition, S is discontinuous, as more and more models are nowadays, then not only you have no chance that this is an integer, but even if you take hitting times, you take the hitting times of some integers, but then you have an overlap, overshot, so you don't reach exactly the integer. So there is no chance. So how could you do? Well, you could say, well, in fact, S is not the real price, but ST is the price, the true price PT, which is an integer, plus some noise. Okay? But again, the situation is even worse, because if you put a noise, typically people will use a noise which is independent of P, so you have even less chance that the sum will be an integer. And if epsilon is as a density, for instance, like it's a Gaussian noise or something, then the chance is exactly 0 in any case, right? Okay, now you can also say, well, Pi is the rounded off value of P. So I take the closest integer, or maybe the integer part. Well, really, you take one or the other, it makes no difference. So you take the integer part of, of STI. Pretending that, okay, well, the S is something which varies continuously, but the price, because of some, well, the method of the way transactions are going, are necessarily in cents. Okay, but if you do that, to be coherent, you should say that you only observe this. So you observe the integer part of ST. And then you run into troubles because you cannot, if you only observe, discretely observe the integer value of, say, Brownian motion, times say, volatility, it's on a finite time interval, it's impossible to recover the variance or the integrated volatility in a more general situation to have consistent estimators, not to speak about central limit theorem or anything like that. Okay, so this is not good because then this goes against the typical way people think of the model S, that they do observe the real price. Okay, so you can also say Pi is the integer part of STI plus a noise. And then, okay, so it's a mixture or a combination of these two things. In this case, yes, it's, or the other way around, STI is Pi, okay, one way or the other. So in that case, you can record, well, if you have nice properties of the noise, but even if it's kind of like not Gaussian, but something with a density, then you can still infer consistently and also with central limit theorem the integrated volatility, for instance, in that case. All right? But doing that means that the Ti have to be very specific. So from S, you cannot gain any real, apart from the general model like this, you cannot gain really insight on the behavior of those things. And of course, it tells you nothing also on the, how you sample or how you transact, how long you wait until the next transaction. And, yeah? No, sorry. Well, if you have questions, of course, please. Okay, so, well, time is going. So I will rather look at the other way around. And I think, yeah, I can, this is where? Here? Two. Yes. Yes. Good. Oh, mince. Okay. So now if you want to go from 2 to 1, well, this is more promising in some sense. But so we come to the real aim of this talk. But the question is, okay, I want to start with a model, a micro model at the very small scale. And I want to say, well, what will be the large-scale model which is compatible? Okay, and well, for that we have a very old example. Of course, it's Bachelier in 1900, who not only was the first one, or maybe the second one, there's some controversy, to introduce the Brownian motion, mathematically speaking, before Einstein, and Wiener, of course, and also probably the first one to really understand the scaling property. So in scaling in the sense that in the sense of limit theorems, not the scaling of a given process, but in the scaling limits, I should say. Okay, so what did he say? Well, the returns, so I forgot to say the returns here. The ith return in the small scale model will be called ui, okay, the increment of price. Okay, so you take the ui to be IID with values in -1 + 1, well, Bernoulli sequence, of course, centered. And then you take the pi is just the sum, well, it's the initial value, of course, plus the sum of the uj for j equal 1 to I. Okay? And what happens? Well, if you take this, well, I will make a, I will make a scaling which is not totally typical with square roots of n. I will, in fact, take n, so I extend the time by n squared. It's just a question of... So if I look at SNT, which is S0 plus 1 over n times P N2T minus 0. So I have to add and subtract the initial value, because I'm not scaling the initial value. It's a given integer, and that's it. Okay? And I scale the increments. So I have twice S0 coming in. So Sn is what? It's the same thing as the price P, except that it's scaled in the sense that it shrinked in space by 1 over n. It could be any sequence un, of course, by 1 over n. And I'm looking at long intervals of time, not t, but n squared t, right? And of course, well, in this case, this converges in law to the Brownian motion. Okay? So this is how Bachelier introduced the Brownian motion. Okay, so now I have, so that could be the basis of what we want to do. Okay, some problems though. The first problem is about the, well, there are mainly two problems here. One is about the drift. Okay, so here the variables are symmetric. Well, of course, you could take, well, you don't need to have Bernoulli variables. You could have variables which, well, what I should say is that the UI belongs to this set. Because of the picture here, I only have returns which are plus, minus 1, or 0. I just drop out those which are bigger. They are really very, very rare. Okay, but still, you may take any centered sequence of independent variables, and you will have, of course, the same thing, right? But now, what if you tilt the distribution of the UI and say they are not centered? So instead of this, you have is some b, which is not 0. Instead of being 0, then of course, what happens if you, here you have a term which is b times n squared, or n squared t, divided by n, so it explodes. If you take here nt instead of n squared t, then the drift doesn't explode, so it converges to S0 plus b times t, yes, no, sorry, bt minus, yeah, bt. Okay, so at the end you get a pure drift. That's normal, of course. You scale a random walk, and either it's centered and you get the Wiener process, or if it's not centered, then if you scale in a way which is not trivial, then you get just pure drift. Okay, so that's a problem, and there are two ways out of this problem. One is to say that we scale differently the drift part and the diffusion part, so to speak. But then, well, it would make sense here because things are simple, but in a more complicated model, that would be very, very arbitrary, very strange. The other way is to say, well, in fact, the model here is a model which depends on n. Everything here depends on n, at the stage at which you are. And so here you have n. S0 doesn't, but all the rest would depend on n. And so you suppose that this is b divided by n. So you have a drift, but it's smaller and smaller when n tends to be large. And this makes sense because, but that's important to understand, because the drift is what? It's the expression of a trend over a long time. So if the unit of time is 1 day, for instance, or 1 week, so you have some drift. Now, if you look at the second or millisecond, for instance, which is the real scale, the real natural unit for transactions, so the millisecond, because they occur every second, third, or 10th millisecond, then the drift should be the initial drift, the real one, the trend, but multiplied by the size of the interval. So, in fact, divided by n, or something like this. So this would be the problem. So it means that if you want to have a realistic model with drift, and the same thing occurs when you have jumps, It's only the diffusion part which is free from that. Then you have to make the local model, the micro model, depend on n. That's necessary. It's very unfortunate because it's counterintuitive, but it's necessary. And of course, the second drawback of this model is that, well, of course, the PIs constructed this way, or the S, are not going to be positive. Of course, it's a random walk on R, and the limit is also not, well, sorry, it should be S0 plus W. Well, even if S0 is positive, well, the sum is not going to be positive, of course. So really, the Bachelier model is, well, it's a very simplistic model, but it's also a model for the log price and not for the price itself. So this is how it should be interpreted. Of course, at the scale of 1 day, the log or the exponential are well known to be linear functions on very small intervals, right? So it makes no difference if you... But on the long run, and here, looking at this limit, I'm really looking at the long run in some sense, then having a grid which is the integers or a grid which is the exponential of the integers is not the same. And the real grid is the integers. The price, it's not the log price which are integers, but it's the price itself, really. So it makes a difference. So you have this problem here. All right. So what we will do now, well, I won't have time to finish, I'm sure, but what we will do is, well, try to find a model which would approximate, for instance, the Black-Scholes model. Then more sophisticated models, like general Markov type model, or a model with stochastic volatility, and probably I won't have time, a model with jumps. Well, I will say a few words, but not many details. And I'm very sorry because things will get complicated. And it's, in some sense, I shouldn't say interesting. It's useful to understand that the connection between small and large scale models is intrinsically something which is complicated. It cannot be trivial, except in this very specific case. Well, you can say that this is trivial or not, but this is very, very classical, right? Okay, so let's look at the Black-Scholes model. So without drift, because I will introduce a drift and show how it comes in for more general Markov model. So I don't want to bother you with this. So the model I want to have is a 0 times the exponential of, well, sigma wt minus sigma squared t over 2. So that's the Black-Scholes model with volatility sigma or sigma squared and with no drift. Okay? So what, well, we can try to mimic what's here, of course. And in this particular case, I really don't have, since I have no drift, I don't need to make the model depend too much on n. Okay? So I could take for ui, well, I'm sorry, I will call vi a sequence. So this is always bigger than 1. So this will be the basis for our returns. So those are, say, IID, E-valued, E is this, centered, and with some variance, which is some V. Okay? And that's, so the variance is, of course, smaller than 1. and I don't want it to be 0 because otherwise things would be totally trivial. I allow for a variance which is smaller than 1 because the V, in fact, if you take that, the probability that Vi is equal to 0 is 1 minus V. So it's important that I can have returns which are 0 because in practice it's very often the case, more than, well, 2/3 or more than that returns are really 0. Okay, so this is just a constant. And I take a sequence phi, set IID, and I will relax these two things in a moment, but okay, IID, positive. So this will be, well, in this case, I suppose the transaction time, well, actually I suppose transaction time were equidistant. Well, he was not talking about transactions, but, well, equidistant. But of course, this is not true. But the first thing you may think of to replace this is to say that they form a renewal sequence. You have a IID sequence phi, which plays the role of the delta I. Okay? So the phi are positive, and, well, this is just for convenience. It's really nothing. So you standardize in the way that it's the expected value is 1. All right. Then what will you do? Well, you take, so let me define Znt, which will be the sum, well, S0 plus, I want to normalize. I take the sum of the Vi, n squared t. Well, I should take n squared. I should, okay, sorry. So let me write this. J, okay, minus S0. Okay, so this is supposed to be the normalized price at the G transaction. Okay, now, what is the volatility of the price? The real volatility, well, the volatility is what is typically called sigma squared, but this is the quadratic variation of the log price. So the real volatility of the price, you could say, at time t is st times sigma, st squared times sigma squared. This is the real, this is diffusion, or the square of the diffusion coefficient for S. Not for the log price, but for S. So this is, and the transaction, in between transaction lags, well, it's a kind of stylized fact also that the frequency of transactions is proportional to the volatility. Or at least, well, kind of this. So if the frequency is, it transacts very often, then the volatility will be high. Okay? And typically, it's a linear relationship. And of course, the frequency is the inverse of the size, right? So what you would call is that delta Ni is, well, this will be the ICE transaction lag but modified by the fact that I want a volatility which is really this. Okay? So this should be like the inverse. So I put 1 over, so sigma squared. Now, because I have this, if I had 1 here, I would put 1 here. But here, one need, okay, just to V. And here I put Zn, which is the price. Well, it will be squared, of course, because it's squared here. And I take at the time I, well, say I minus 1, and divided by, multiplied by n2 squared. No, divided by n2. Okay. No, sorry. What I'm saying is stupid, this. Sorry. If I can read my thing. Yeah, the I. Or I minus 1, just before, right? Okay. Except that if I do that, well, I will have no guarantee that Z stays positive. So what I say is that this is true. I put that if Zn I minus 1 is bigger than, say, 2 over n. It could be 1 over n also. So n is going to infinity. So it is very small, okay? And if Zn I minus 1 is smaller, so Zn I can be, well, the Vi are random walk, so it can take positive and negative values. So this eventually will become negative and go back positive and so on and so forth, right? But if I have this, I put plus infinity. That means what? That means that I have, okay, I start times 0, so here I have delta 1, delta 2, and the price, well, I write it continuously, but of course it's integer valued. Okay, and when it gets close to 0, last time it was bigger than 2 over n, I still have this, and then I have no transaction at all. The next one is at time infinite. That means what? That means that the firm defaulted because its price was coming too low. Okay? And of course, this distance is less than 2 over n, so it's going to 0. So you can interpret that in saying that if the price really gets to be close to 0, then the firm defaults. So you don't care. So what's important is up to the first time you arrive to this, and then after that you don't care, because you can define delta and I, but they will play no role at all in the construction of the process, right? Okay, and you construct that, and then you have the process Sn, which is this. So the Pn is just the sum of the Vi, right, as I said before. Then this will converge, so Sn will converge in law to the S, which is here. It takes some time to prove, but it's not very, very, very difficult. It's standard computations and theorems on limit of stochastic processes and stochastic differential equations. Okay, so you write, this is a kind of, you can write the Sn satisfy the kind of difference equation, because it's discrete in times, basically. And here you have another differential equation, and the coefficient converge, and okay, you manage. And you should write the equation for S, not for the log, of course. So that's not very difficult to prove. And you see exactly the connection between the frequency observation or transactions, not observation, transactions, and the volatility. So this is a reasonably simple model. And of course, you don't need this. What you need is that the standardized VIs converge in log to a Brownian motion. You don't need that they are IID or anything. What you need is, it's nowhere. Okay, what you need is that 1 over n sum 1 of n squared t, the ui converge to a Brownian motion, vi, sorry. Sorry, I forgot to say, I use vi here because I should say u and I is vi in this particular case. So you need that, and here it's the same. You don't need them to be IID. What you really need is that the sum of phi from 1 to nt divided by n converge to t in probability. That would be enough. These two things, so this is in convergence in law, of course, and this is, so these would be enough. Okay, so that's, so now. Now let's look at the case where I want something a bit more sophisticated than the Black-Scholes model because, well, okay. Everybody, yeah? Sorry? No, no. No. What's really necessary is what's up there. That you have this convergence of the VI normalized, right? So they could be dependent. You could have mixing conditions or whatever. And the same for the other one. You have a law of large number for the phi, but they don't need to be independent. Of course, it's simple when they are independent, but or IID or anything like that.
So phi and v can be dependent?
They can be dependent too, yes. Because, well, when you have convergence in law, on one side and probability on the other, you also have the joint convergence, right? So that's... so the second convergence should not be in law. Well, it's not enough that it is in law. You need probability. Okay, so if you want more sophisticated models, so I will try to be faster. So you may want, for instance, to the model could be the following one. So let me use the same. Okay, so you have a non-homogeneous Markov process with a drift which is here and the volatility which is there. Okay, so this is the original, well, the large-scale process. Okay, I put S and S here. Well, it's like for the Black-Scholes, because that ensures that S will be positive. And on the other hand, if S is positive and satisfies an equation of this type without S, it also satisfies an equation with S. You just change the coefficients, of course. But okay, and I make the assumptions, well, that B and sigma are continuous, sigma is positive, and they are such that this equation has a unique solution, which is not exploding, of course. So you, whatever conditions. Okay, and you want to do the same thing. So, well, the procedure is basically the same. You have the VI, you take VI, and you take, except that it will depend on n now, because I have a drift, so the model should depend on n. Here, the model does not depend on n except when it stops. Right? Otherwise, it basically doesn't depend on n. In that case, you need really the model to depend on n. So you have V and I, which again, I will suppose they are IID centered. IID when I varies, of course. Centered, variance equal to V. Always values -1, 0, +1. I have the phi's, which are also, say, IID. Again, this can be weakened. Well, not exactly like this, needs stronger conditions than above, but in the same spirit as that. IID with positive, of course, with, say, 1. Or you may put phi n if you want. It doesn't really matter. And then what is the, you will have, so again, the Znj will be the same as before, except that I take the V I n. The same as before. And I consider this function, which is 1 over x squared, sigma squared of t and x. So what is that? Well, actually, I will have to put the V2. So this is the volatility, the spot volatility of S. Not of the log, but of S. Exactly as here, I put the volatility, the spot volatility of the process itself. So that plays exactly the same role, except that now, well, it depends on time too. That's it. And to deal with the drift, this is more complicated. To deal with the drift, I consider, first of all, this function, which is B. Then I have to be careful because I have to multiply by x. This is because I have x here. And I have to multiply by this function ft of x also. And I consider one is the case where x is non-zero. Of course, here also it's when x is non-zero. And say, to avoid trivial problems, if x is 0, I said this is equal to 1. Well, what will happen in practice is that you never get to 0, but, well, for the definition. And so this would be the drift, except that you have to consider rather the function gn of tx, which is g of tx divided by n, because you make the drift dependent on n, and you make it smaller and smaller when n becomes bigger, as I said before. And then you have to take, just to avoid stupid things, the set, so you take a drift which is 0 if this is bigger than n times v infimum 2 minus v. Well, those are, it's not very important. It's for technical reasons, okay? So it's essentially, okay? And so now, how do you construct, sorry, I'm sorry, I've been too fast here. So the phi is still correct, but the VI. So you construct the VI in such a way that the expected value of VI, I will say, conditional on something, which I will say in a moment, which is Gn. So now this is Gn of T at ni minus 1. I will explain things as they are in a moment, times Zn I minus 1. Okay, and the variance is equal to V. So this is, well, Vn, of course. So this, the variance equal to V, it's the same as up there. And we replace the centered by the fact that we have a drift. And so it's tilted. And the drift is in fact Gn. Okay. And, well, the proper thing that we have to take is this particular Gn. And now what's T hat and what's in here? What is condition in here? Well, it's condition on the past. So you start at 0, and then you want to, so G0, you know everything here. You know, well, the initial data is just a 0. This is known. So the G0 here would be the trivial sigma field. Then you construct G1, you construct V1 this way, putting this should be 0, and this should be S0. Okay. And then it gives you the law of V1, and it should also, I should also say what is delta hat and I, which is the interval. I put hat because this is not the final values. It will be changed in a bit. So what's that? Well, it's exactly what's here. It's the f, the function f of t ni minus 1, z ni minus 1 times phi I. So this is an induction construction where you, how to say, this would be the sigma field before, strictly before time I. So this is known, so you know delta n1, if you know phi 1, then this gives you V. So you know Zn1, and you also know T hat n1. And then you repeat, so it's a kind of induction. So it's a Markov type construction, no wonder, because you want to have a Markov limit. So, of course, okay, and you do that, and the real thing is, the real delta n is delta n at if, provided, well, exactly as before, provided you state positive, or rather bigger than I minus 1 is bigger than 2 over n. It's infinite otherwise. Okay, so again, and with this construction, you get the convergence toward that. So what is the conclusion is that of this part is that, well, you really can reconstruct this model with something which, apart from this very specific form, it looks strange, this sort of thing. But you could start with a function f, do and g, two functions g and f, make this, and then have to the limit, well, the limit here so that b and sigma are given, you just inverse these things and are given by this and that. And this type of model is not so stupid. It's rather primitive, of course, but it's not well, it kind of makes sense at the local, very local, or the tick level. Okay? Now, it's clear that I have no time to go into any more details for the other model. So for stochastic volatility models, well, there is an explicit limit. It's more complicated, but if you want to deal, instead of this Markov thing, okay, let's forget about the drift. You just want, so sigma t st dwt, okay, so no drift, but sigma is, let me write it square root of c, so c is the squared volatility, and it's easier to write in terms of c. So dct is some alpha of ct dt plus well, a of ct dw prime t, and w and w prime are two Wiener processes which have a possibly have a correlation rho. it's possible to have a correlation. Okay, so for instance, if you have the Heston model, alpha is a linear function of C, well, negative direct or coefficient, and A would be A of CT A of X would be a constant times square root of X. That would give you the Heston model, but you can think of many other things. And you can also construct a local model or tick-by-tick model exactly in this kind of thing. So you don't have anymore the drift for S, if you want to have no drift for S, because it simplifies things. But then you have to construct also the approximation in the same spirit of C. So you have two sequences, not just the V and I, but you also have some V prime and I, which are related to the volatility behavior. And the Vn and V prime can be correlated in any way as you choose. So that would be with the correlation rho, which is the correlation of W and W prime. And you have a similar limit theorem. Now, if you have jumps, so just 1 minute, if you have jumps, things are unfortunately much more complicated. First of all, you cannot have, of course, a convergence in law in the functional sense, because the tick-by-tick model has jumps only, and the limit has, well, jumps of some size. So if you normalize the tick-by-tick model, the jumps have size 1 over n. Tends to 0, so you cannot have a functional convergence. You can have at most the finite dimensional convergence. It's all right, but secondly, you have to model separately the ladders and the kind of quiet periods where you have a behavior which is kind of like continuous. Okay, so you do that, and you can reach, in fact, for instance, any Levy process or exponential of a Levy process as a limit or things like that. Okay, but it's technically a bit complicated, but it's essentially, on the notation point of view, it's very complicated. I'm very sorry about that. Now, this can be made encompass other things, like you have quiet periods, different kind of quiet periods with different volatilities, where quiet periods and then periods which are with small ladders going up and down, and sometimes a very large ladder or things like that. So that's also possible. It becomes more and more complicated when you sophisticate the model, of course, but okay. This still makes... The problem here is, well, is this discrete or tick-by-tick model kind of reasonable or not? And this is, of course, very far from the Hawkes processes, for instance, that many people are using now for modeling, well, tick-by-tick data or order books. So that's very far. The second thing, this is a bit kind of my hope, is that, well, what is the error? So you really observe the real price. So what you observe is P, or Sn, the real Sn. And what in statistics, so you observe this, which is integer valued by construction, right? And, well, integer for at each stage n for the right unit, right? And, okay, and the difference, this is supposed to be the real price. And the difference is not 0, of course. You have convergence in law, but what does the difference do? Okay? And in some sense, this is the real noise. So what are the properties of Sn minus S? And this is kind of rather difficult, of course, because but in some sense, this is my hope that we can do something about that and have some intuition about what is the real noise when you do statistics for in high frequency setting, for instance. But high frequency setting for statistics means low frequency for the tick by tick data. It's maybe 1 second, not 1 millisecond at all. Okay, so this is what. Okay, so in some sense there is not much content to what I said, and I'm sorry, but well, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for this very original talk. Is, questions, comments?
Yeah, well, it should be it's an integer over n, right? Because Zn takes only, no, by construction here, Zn takes only the values k over n. Okay, for k, any positive or negative integers. So you could stop at 2 or 1 or 0 over n. But if you stop at 0 over n, well, you divide by something. So you have to stop maybe at 1 over n. It's just for convenience. I mean, there is no special reason. You could stop at any time, any sequence which goes to 0. In fact, that would end up the same.
Questions?
It's more a sort of philosophical question,
Yeah.
which is this 1 to 2 or 2 to 1. Okay,
Yeah.
so I want to hear your opinion about that. So because it's in 1 to 2, you say, okay, there exists a semi-martingale which describes the efficient price, and then this becomes noisy because there is the order book and all the frictions and so on and so forth. And then what we observe is different from this, let's say, latent variable which lives but is not observable. In vision 2, okay, the role for continuous time stochastic process and stochastic differential equation becomes relevant only on a very large time scale, if I understand correctly. Yeah. This is where I want to hear your opinion about that. No, that you say, okay, maybe this price does not exist, or this efficient price does not exist. Simply the dynamics of a sufficiently large time scale where I can neglect the small fluctuation due to becomes something which can be described for convenience by a stochastic differential equation. Is this the view for the 2 to 1? Because I understand the 1 to 2.
Yeah, really, in some sense, yes. Because after all, you can have a tick-by-tick model and say, well, what is the price? Well, the real price, so I have the observation, the transaction here, so the price is here, 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 right? And in between, I have no knowledge. So the real price is this, this. Okay, so you could say that. And that would be perfect, except that, and that would be a semi-martingale, of course. But it's a discrete time. Well, it's not discrete time because the transaction can be, have a density, the times between transactions, but still, it's basically a discrete model, and nobody used that because you cannot do any computations on the long term. That's just this. So people used scaling limits since a long time in other fields, like in physics or biology, just to say, well, I have something which is too complicated, but if I look at long term, well, it goes to the Wiener process or to a Levy process or to a stochastic differential equation. And then I can do computations. So that's it. But the S, it's called efficient price. I really wonder why, because there is no efficiency involved, and it simply doesn't exist, in my sense. It's an abstraction.
So in the 2 to 1, there is no efficient price, or
no,
unless I believe that this is an efficient price.
The efficient price is that you know nothing in between, and it just doesn't exist.
So I just continue with the provocation. I wanted to be even more radical, okay?
Yes.
Because
yes.
Since I can, I mean, so you just said nobody uses discrete time. Because in the long run, you don't know how to make computations.
Yeah.
On the other hand, okay, you make a continuous limit, you get a few, very few models which are sort of integrable. But then when you go back to application, to the markets, you have to simulate them. So in some sense, you put out the problem again. So you go back to any practical market implementation will be made.
I agree.
Sorry?
Yeah, I agree.
Again, using. I understand. No, I understand. So
Here,
then-
yes,
No, I understand. But then in the end, you don't use. I mean, you have very few closed formulas also in
No,
continuous
but-
time.
oh,
So
but-
I mean,
Yeah.
no. It's a matter because I understand. I mean, it's a debate because in the world of deterministic systems, I mean, the discrete models have an edge on the continuous models.
Yeah.
Because it's a different world, I understand, but you have also stochastic models there, and
sure.
and the edge comes from the fact that you can embed any flow into an action of Z, I mean a discrete dynamical system, but the vice versa is not true unless you make an extension of it's also true of your phase space. So it's also true that you cannot, in general, compute, but I mean, you cannot have closed formulas, you cannot integrate your discrete time dynamical systems. But we know that this is not a deficit of the theory. It is just the way things are. I mean,
Absolutely.
that things are not integrable. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
So the question I'm asking is, in this, it's really philosophical. Is it on one side, I understand that you want to reconcile the 2 points of view for very good reasons also, but on the other side, can't one try to have a genuine update of the discrete time point of view also in modeling financial markets so that it becomes a little bit less the come si dice Cenerentola? I mean the Cinderella of the subject, and it starts to be a real subject also for mathematicians.
No, but that would be nice, of course, if you could. I have the. If you could take a model. Well, the problem, in some, maybe it's just because we are used to that. The continuous, the long-range model, well, it's a semi-martingale. Semi-martingale doesn't say much, right? It's a very large class. But people think that the Brownian motion, for instance, plays a very important role. Okay? Well, just an aside thing. If you take a Brownian motion time change with the Cantor function, it's still a very nice continuous semi-martingale or martingale, and the properties are terrible, right, of course. So it doesn't look at all like the Brownian motion, and it's qualified exactly as the Brownian motion is for okay. But apart from that, so the winner process because people feel comfortable about that. Or with drums also, there are some standard model with drums, or stochastic volatility, or this and that. Now, the problem with tick by tick models is that, first of all, it's very difficult to have something which is motivated. The type of model that you use, which is motivated. So if you look at, for instance, this type of thing, you can motivate in the sense that it's since this, well, I've erased the model for that, the Markov thing. But you want a Markov thing here at the limit, so you look at the kind of Markov thing here. But why? Is that, well, does that make sense in practice or not? Well, who knows, right? So this is extremely difficult to test, right? Especially because you don't want to have homogeneous thing. If things were stationary and you say, well, you have a tick-by-tick model, so it's stationary, so you have hundreds of thousands or millions of observations, so you can make very good statistical inference. But that's not reasonable. You must have something which is non-homogeneous. So you cannot make inference using the long run. That's just impossible. So what's reasonable, I don't know. And then, second point, okay, you have your model and you do what with that? Yeah, okay, you can do computations, and in principle, discrete computation should be simpler than continuous one, right? In practice, it's the opposite, of course, but I'm not saying that it depends on the model. I mean,
Other questions? I have a technical one. Maybe it was included in your last remarks. So sorry if I ask to repeat. If you have two asset prices, can you?
I've not looked at all at that. But I don't think there are, conceptual problems, intrinsic problems to carry on the same program. But no, what's realistic, I don't know. First of all, what's realistic as a model, even in large time scale for two assets or several assets.
But you can decide the rule separately for the two. This rule that if Sn is bigger, you do.
This yes,
separately,
this yes. No, because it's irrelevant. That's the strange thing about the thing. Okay, it looks you really need. It's written. You really need to stop here because otherwise you can get. Okay, but for the limit thing. What happens is that you never get close to zero in any finite time.
Yes.
Okay? So, in some sense, it's basically irrelevant. It's just to have a model which doesn't have a local model which doesn't have negative values, but this is irrelevant. So, if you have two assets, that's exactly the same. That's not a problem. The problem will be how you correlate the two assets, of course. That's.
Other questions, other remarks? If not, we thank you very much.
Thank you very much.